Welcome to the Stress Free Dentist Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Block. As always, I want to inspire, entertain, and educate you on the best tools and technologies out there. My goal is to help make your practice and career more profitable, efficient, and most importantly, more enjoyable. And check out all of my nonfiction and children's books on Amazon, and check out the stressfreedentist.com for any upcoming events. And if you're feeling you're a dental professional that's burnt out, or you just feel stuck or want to get to that next level, visit the International Academy of Dental Life Coaches or www.iadlc.com, and we'll get you matched up with a life coach that understands dentistry. I also wanted to thank our amazing sponsor, Ekwa Marketing. They have helped me and my practice over the years to improve with SEO and website performance. And to find out how you can make your practice dominate in your area, go to www.equa.com/MSMSFD to book your complimentary meeting. Again, that's www.ekwa.com/MSMSFD.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Welcome back to another episode. And we are joined by recurring guest, Naren Arulrajah, who's the CEO of Ekwa Marketing. And today we're going to be talking about everything you need to know about Google reviews. Naren, thanks for joining us again.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Eric. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, actually, as we speak, I think my office, we're up to about 718 Google reviews, which is, I'm super proud of that. And it's really helped me with my patient base and grow my practice, even being, out of network. But let's just first tap into the obvious question. Are Google reviews really that important, and why?
Yeah, that's an excellent place to start. I know for a long time, practice owners thought being listed on the Delta list or, any one of those insurance company lists is how they got patients. But I was talking to a friend of mine who works a lot with insurance, Ben, and he was telling me that less than 10% of, people actually go and look at that list when they, decide which provider to go to. Instead, what they're doing is they're all going to Google and looking at practices with good Google reviews. I guess it's just, to some sense, we become automatic in the way we do things. We use Google reviews for everything else to go find a restaurant, find a, plumber, pretty much any kind of service, right? So same way we use Google reviews to find a dentist. So that's where, a lot of the decision making is happening. Of course, they're using Google to research and learn about a particular service or topic. But once they've done that and they're ready to pull the plug, they rely on like Google reviews. And again, studies are showing this. Most people, the last thing they do before they call your office is to look at your Google reviews. So it is really, 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 really important in 2024. The good news, I think, as a practice owner is now it evens the playing field. You don't need to be like a billion-dollar corporate DSO with massive resources to get your patients to say wonderful things about you. A tiny practice down the street with 1,000 patients can also have amazing Google reviews, right? Can get their patients to say how wonderful they are. So the good news is if you are running a small business, this is one of those things that works in your favor versus in the favor of big corporations. Google reviews, it's an equalizer. You could put millions of dollars in marketing, but if your patients think you provide, crappy service or you don't know what you're doing, you can't fake it. Like no amounts of millions of dollars is going to fix that. So it's a great equalizer. And I think it's something that every practice owner, every private practice owner should take advantage of, because really there's no reason why you can't have a wonderful Google review page with hundreds of Google reviews. I mean, Eric has 700 and something, and unbelievable reviews. What's your average rating, Eric?
Actually, I just Googled Acton Dentist, which is the town that I'm in. We have 823 Google reviews. Our average is 4.9.
Exactly. So, I mean, and it's Eric is not an anomaly. I have seen, pretty much 80% of our customers having wonderful reviews. Of course, getting 800 is not easy, so I'm not going to, make it sound easy. So Eric is in his own league, if I may. But But getting 200, getting 300, getting 4.9 stars, that should be something that every practice should be able to achieve, within a few years.
You know who else looks at this? And there's such a staffing crisis now, but staff are going to look at the reviews too to see if they may want to work in your office, as well as associate dentists, specialists. Everyone looks at the reviews, not just patients. But I'm actually on Google right now, and I can see my listing. Over to the right, there's the map. Can you talk about the Google map?
Yeah, absolutely. Google pretty much is, we think of Google as a search engine, right? In other words, anytime we need any information, whether it's how do I get from this point to that point, how do I, which dentist should I go to? It helps you, figure those decisions out. So it's this engine or a tool that's in our in our fingertips 24 hours a day, whether it's on our smartphone, whether it's on our desktop, whether it's on iPhone, Android, you name it, it's with us. It's all over the place, right? So it's a tool that helps you make decisions, and the questions we ask when we make decisions are different. On one hand, it's about educating ourselves. That's where regular SEO comes in, right? We are learning about something. We're learning about implants. We're looking at cases. We are looking at the different ways of doing implants and so forth, right? That's one thing that helps us make decisions, right? Before you decide to buy a particular brand of any kind of car, let's say you want to buy electric cars, before you decide on the brand, before you decide on the model and the features, you do research, right? Because there's no one to say you do this, so you have to do that. You have choices. So you do research in making up your mind. And then finally, towards the end of that research, we want to be sure that we're making the right choice. And a lot of times, we know nobody's going to say, I am good at these things and I suck at these things. Everybody will say I'm good at everything. So consumers need a way to kind of make their own judgments, and reviews is how they do it. So Maps is a tool that's very, very popular on smartphones. I'm sure you all have, typed in, cafe near me or Italian restaurant near me, just because you're lazy and you feel like having Italian food and you don't want to sit here and do a PhD on all the Italian food in that neighborhood and, look at a list of 17 Italian places. You want Google to just show you the top 3 or 4, and you quickly look at the reviews. You quickly see, how many people have reviewed them, and maybe even, click onto their website and see some of the dishes or some of the menu items. And you make a decision pretty fast within like a minute or two in which Italian restaurant you want to have lunch. And let's say you're traveling somewhere and you feel like eating Italian food that day, right? So same way, Google Maps helps us make, decisions, finding a business near us, reading up reviews, getting driving directions, even easily calling the office, right? Because when I'm on my phone and I'm on Google Maps, I can literally press on the phone number and I don't need to type it in. It immediately starts calling the office. I can click on the directions button. I don't need to type in the starting point and the ending point. Google knows where you are. Google knows where you're going, and immediately it pulls up directions. So Google Maps has become a huge part of search. The other part of search is organic search or natural search, which is like what shows up below the maps. And it's kind of mixed up on a desktop. On a desktop, you get both. You get the maps at the top, and then you get regular search. On smartphones, these are separate apps. The Google Maps is a separate app versus your regular search is a separate app. So people can use it both ways. So I have seen, like for Eric, for example, thousands and thousands of people every single map seeing his practice on Google Maps. And how do we know this? Google provides stats around that. It'll tell us how many people saw Eric's practice. It'll tell us how many people looked up directions, how many people called the office. It'll give us all kinds of metrics around how, without you spending one dime on ads, you are getting thousands of people who are interested in dentistry to find you and what they did. Did they look up directions? Did they call your office? So it's very, very powerful tool. And if you lean in, like with Eric, you can get thousands of people to discover you through that. Obviously, not everyone becomes your patient, but some of them will become your patient. So even if you get an extra 10 patients, right, from Google Maps, that's massive. But in some cases, I've seen 30, 40, 50 new patients a month.
What's a good goal regarding Google reviews? I know some people may get overwhelmed thinking about this, but if you start to set, tangible goals, it can be a little less stressful. What are your recommendations there?
Yeah. So in the last 5 years, we have leaned in and asked every single one of our clients to work on this. This is the one thing where we need the client's help, because everything else with SEO and so forth, we can do 95% of the heavy lifting. Unfortunately, no marketing company knows who your happy patients are, so there's no way they can get these reviews except you. So the minimum goal I would recommend to every single one listening to this podcast is get at least 10 reviews a month. 10 reviews a month. So how do I know this is a good number? Because we have tested it. We have tried it with hundreds of practices, and 90% of people who lean into this. Of course, if you don't lean in, it's not going to magically happen. If you lean into it, 90% of you will be able to achieve this. Only exceptions might be a brand new startup where you don't have enough patients, but outside of startups, this is a very doable goal. Let's think this through, right? If you open, like most offices, 4 days a week, that's approximately like, one review every other day. It's not a lot. So 10 is absolutely doable. I know, more successful practices have a goal of 20 reviews, or higher, but let's start with 10. And you want to make sure you're hitting those numbers week after week. And then, of course, there is something to be said about quality of reviews. There are those who will give you 5 stars but won't say a word. And then there are those who will write 2 sentences, 3 sentences, a paragraph saying why they loved your practice. I am a fan of the second type of review where they're writing sentences or paragraphs. I call those reviews love letter reviews. And the reason they're powerful is it's much more compelling to the person who's trying to choose you, because they see these paragraphs of people gloating about what a wonderful office it is. So it kind of makes them like fall in love with the practice almost, not just say, hey, I'm still not sure, but they really start reading and believing what's being said. And the second reason it's important is those phrases or keywords are now part of Google search. So when people are looking for those keywords, like say implants keep showing up, then I'm looking for implants. Your chance of you showing up for implants goes up because people keep talking about implants with regards to your practice. So for those 2 reasons, I love those reviews. So now I'm not saying all 10 should be love letter reviews, but hopefully most of them can be love letter reviews. We have gone in depth on this, on how to get love letter reviews. So we'll add a link to one of the podcasts we have done either here or on Thriving Dentist, and perhaps that might be useful to you.
Now, what about dentists that are worried about negative reviews? What are your thoughts on negative reviews?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by saying that change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. It's a quote from Wayne Dwyer. He passed away, but he's a very smart guy who wrote some interesting books. And he's right. Change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I remember reading about this concept first from Stephen Covey, who wrote the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he talks about a story where there are these 2 or 3 kids making a ruckus at a train or a bus stand. And the dad was just sitting there quietly. And eventually people got so upset, they started talking to each other about, what a useless dad, and he's not doing about this, kids who are causing such a big ruckus and making everybody else uncomfortable around them. And then one person had the guts to go up and talk to the dad and say, hey, can you please control your kids? They're just being such a distraction to all of us here. And the dad goes, oh, we're coming from the hospital. My wife passed away. Their mom passed away. And I guess I don't know how to deal with it. I guess they don't know how to deal with it either. Now, immediately, everyone who was listening to that conversation, all these people who were grumbling and talking to each other, they totally, changed. I mean, they literally, nothing changed. The situation was the same. The kids were still the same kids. Everything changed. It's just that new piece of information changed how they looked at that situation. So now all of a sudden they felt guilty, and, a couple of people trying to talk to the kids and, be, engaging the kids, and and somebody else said to the dad, hey, I'm really, really sorry to hear this. If there's anything I can do, please let me know. I mean, these are strangers, right? On a train station. Like all of a sudden they changed how they looked at it. So negative reviews is something that you have to make a conscious effort to change the way you think. And I know this, having worked with doctors. Most doctors are perfectionists, so they take it very personally, and it ruins their day. A lot of times it goes to a point where they are like bad people to be around when that happens. They're like grumpy with the office, and not really focused on the patients, because they're like so much ruminating about what happened, and it shouldn't have happened, and why did it happen, and this and that. They get negative and angry. So my take is, you all went through advanced education, right, to become a doctor. So you didn't get 100 for everything. I'm sure 1 or 2 did, but most of you didn't. You got certain things wrong. You got certain things where it was not perfect. That's part of life. Same thing with negative reviews. You just can't please every single person every day. And many times it has nothing to do with this. Perhaps they had a bad day, right? So I would say start looking at it as it's not about how many negative reviews you have. It's what's my average score. If you have 4.6, 4.7, it's okay that there's few people who are not saying wonderful things. So one way I turn it into action is I kind of look at, okay, for every negative review I get, I want to get 20 positive reviews, right? So that's like 4.5 or above. So what can I do to drive those positive reviews? That's where, that 10 goal a month makes a difference. Second thing I look at is, I would read it. I would see if it's real or not. Sometimes your disgruntled employees, competition might have done something. It's like, so like in our case, with the case of Ekwa, if it is something that we can get rid of because it violates Google's policies, we would work on it and we would get rid of it. But if it's something that we cannot get rid of, then of course we can't do anything about it. So we just accept it. Few tips: don't try to argue with your patients. Don't try to make them wrong, even if they are just not making sense or they're not being correct. But if it is a real patient, then I would say something like, please call our office, and ask for me. I'll do everything I can to make this right. Something like that. So take the high road, either you or your office manager, depending on the size of your practice. Now, if the patient is not there or something, then I guess work with your marketing company. Hopefully it violates one of the Google's rules and we can get rid of it. Of course, your company needs to know what they're doing. And again, there's no guarantees, but if it violates rules, definitely someone who knows what they're doing can get rid of it. So that's my take. Just, change the way you look at things. Don't take it personally. Think about like objectively, what can I do? And then just make it happen. And sometimes objectively, what you can do is to work on positive reviews, not necessarily deal with it. And also, like, I think this idea of all of the above approach makes sense. So don't just do one, like get more reviews. If it's a, illegitimate review, try to get rid of it through some rules. If it's violating it, don't take it personally. So do all of them at the same time.
Yeah, and I'd say, don't beat yourself up if you get a bad review. It's going to happen. It happens to everyone. In dentistry, we can tend to focus on the one negative thing that happened during the day, but you got to focus on all the positive things that happened and, bury the negative review with positive reviews. Now, speaking of that, how do we grow our Google reviews? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I think step one is having a goal, right? If you don't have a goal, you're not going to accomplish it. So like if there are 10 things you want to work on every month on your practice, this should be one of those 10 things or even one of those top 5 things. So you have a goal, you get everyone to agree to that goal. So if you have never had a goal but you're not a startup practice, you're somewhat of established practice, say, okay, our goal is 10. Step 2, have a champion, someone who owns this, right? His or her job to make sure to pay attention to it. And tell that person, hey, you are the Google review champion, or ask somebody to volunteer. You will find people who love talking to patients, who love reading those reviews, and they'll put up their hand. You can say, hey, I'm looking for a champion for Google reviews who wants to be my champion. And whoever's the champion, tell them, hey, you know what? I'm going to make it fun for you. If we hit 10, you're going to get a bonus. Any month we get 10 reviews or more, you're going to get $100. And once you start hitting $100, month after month, in 2 to 3 months, you can go back to them and say, hey, you keep hitting 100 every single month. Why don't we shoot for 15? If you hit 15, then I'm going to make it 150 or 200, whatever you're comfortable with, right? Now, these, like if you're paying $100 for 10 reviews, that's $10 a review. It's worth its weight in gold because that single review could help you for the next 10 years. So don't worry about the $100 or $150. Just focus on the upside. And then finally, you need a mechanism through which this is something you all focus on a daily basis. So if you have a morning huddle, the champion should bring up who are the 2 people we're going to ask for reviews today, and bring up who's going to do the asking. Because, people who are upset with you will go out of their way to badmouth you on 7 places. The ones who are happy, they just sometimes forget about you. I mean, most of them will forget about you because, yes, they felt really good at the time of when they were at the office, but then they move on to the rest of their lives, right? The work, kids, whatever is bugging them, they're just thinking about those things. So being able to decide who's going to do the asking, who are we going to ask, and then celebrating the win from prior day. Okay, yesterday we asked 2, we got a review. Great job, Jenny. Keep it up. Hey, how did you ask? Now Jenny will say, oh, this is how I asked. I talked about her son. Obviously, it's the favorite topic for Mrs. Jane. And after a while, I asked her how she felt about what we do, and she just kept raving about us. Because after I asked her about her son, she was so happy that I remembered that's important to her, and she was just in such a good mood. And that's when I said, "Hey, we love taking care of you, Mrs. Jane. Every time we see you, we get excited. So, can I ask you for a tiny favor?" She's like, "Of course. We want to attract more people like you. Here's our QR code for our Google page. Can you just, go to this page and write a review for us?" And she's like, "Absolutely." And say, "Hey, once you finish writing the review, let me know so I can read it and tell Dr. Smith about your wonderful review. It would make his day as well." And of course, she's like, "Of course." She goes there and she's in the office anyway. So she just, your practice is the hero of the moment because you guys care, you guys think about her and remember what's important to her and all that good stuff. And of course, you do great dentistry. She writes that wonderful review. So I think it's just you need a method and then you need to stay on top of it. A champion, the daily huddle, goal setting, the bonus, all those things. And of course, you can even reward the team. So the very first time you're doing it, you can tell the team, "Hey, as a team, if we hit our target, I'm going to take everyone involved for a nice dinner." Or Jenny's going to take everyone involved for a nice dinner. Or it could be the entire practice if your practice is small and you only have like 3 or 4 people. Of course, if you have 25 people, then I don't know if you would say that because not everyone is going to be involved in it. So it could be like 3 or 4 people who are involved in asking for reviews. Could be the hygienist, could be the assistant. Sometimes they are the best because they have the relationship. Could be the dentist, so it depends.
And if I'm a dentist and I just don't feel comfortable asking, if the patient is, leaving, they're going up front and you have a staff member that asks, "How was your visit today?" And they say, "Great, it was great." At that point, is that a good time to ask, or what is your recommendation regarding just, simply asking for the review?
Yeah, I think asking is better than not asking, but when do you ask is key too, because imagine you ask when they're leaving your practice, right? Now they will say, "Yes, of course, I'll write a review," but then they forget, right? Because as soon as they get into that car, they're thinking about driving directions or they're running late or what they need to do next and all that stuff, right? So ideally, you should ask 10, 15 minutes before they leave. The sooner the better. So of course, if it's an existing patient, you can talk about it at the beginning of the conversation when you say, "Meet Mrs. Smith," and to ask her about her son, right? It's not even it's not even like middle or the tail end. So whoever has that relationship, if it's a hygienist, you start chit chatting, right? That's when you could ask, and then time it strategically. So, "Hey, while I prepare this, why don't you write the review?" So she could do the writing when you are doing something in the background, right? So you give her 2, 3 minutes to write that review and she'll get it done. And now, of course, it's a brand new patient. That's why I would ask at the end, assuming you had an amazing experience. But if you have, let's say, a patient coordinator, that person could ask. Maybe schedule like in your appointment, like 5 minutes with the coordinator at the end to review how they felt and what's next and so forth. So that could be the time. But definitely give them the time to write the review while in your practice. Because if I'm not saying the others won't do it, but the percentage will become so small. So 5%, 10%. So you're doing all this work and 95% won't follow through. But if they do it when you're there, and that's the other secret for getting these love letter reviews. Remember, they are there. You are their hero. You and your team is who they are looking up to and who they're saying, "Oh, what a wonderful office," right? That's the best time for them to write those reviews because they remember Jenny. They just said hello to Jenny. They're going to mention Jenny's name or whoever else they worked with that day.
Yeah, I imagine, once they leave the office, every minute that passes, there's less and less chance for someone to leave the review. They're walking to their car, they're driving in their car, they get home or wherever they're going, and then, out of sight, out of mind. So, all right, let's wrap up with, let's just say I'm getting some Google reviews, but it's not enough. How else can I grow my practice with new patient volume?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Now, Google reviews is even very part of the marketing strategy. I would say it's responsible for maybe 20, 30% of new patients, but the other 70% comes from, other marketing. Of course, the lowest cost of all the different marketing options and the best outcomes come from SEO. The challenge with SEO is 5% of practices get 95% of the free traffic. So the other 95% who don't get anything from Google have to pay Google a lot of money in terms of Google Ads. So I would recommend, booking what we call a marketing strategy meeting to kind of get a full review on how you're doing with Google Maps, how you're doing with regular SEO. Are you in that top 5% getting 95% of the free business from Google? Or are you in the 95% who has to pay so much money, either in the form of a PPO write-off or in the form of ads to get those same patients? And our team will help you, figure out where you stand, give you a report card. Are you like acing everything that you need to ace to be in that top 5%? Or you're acing one or two things, but the other things you need to work on? The next thing they'll do is they'll give you a plan as well. Like, okay, how do you ace all the things you need to ace to get into that top 5% of both SEO and Google Maps? So it's really worth your time. It's a $900 gift from us to you. And the link is ekwa.com/MSMSFD. Eric's practice gets more than 60 new patient calls a month. And that's how we started 4 years ago with that meeting. Any comments, Eric?
No, that's a great way to get started, and don't be afraid to ask for reviews. For me, reviews have been such an important part of growing my practice and being fully out of network. We're no longer relying on insurance companies, being on their list and on their website to get new patient calls. We're focusing on reviews and Google SEO. So Naren Arulrajah, I wanted to thank you so much again for such a great episode, and look forward to the next one.
Thanks again for listening to the Stress Free Dentist podcast. And don't hesitate to get in touch with me at info@thestressfreedentist.com. And if you haven't already, please subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Until the next episode, I'm Dr. Eric Block, the Stress Free Dentist.